Here's a question, and I want you to actually answer it before I tell you. What could kill 1,746 people in a single night and leave every house standing, every field green, every tree in place, and not a mark on a single body? No fire, no flood, no wound, just people in their beds, gone. Drop your guess in the comments right now, because whatever you're picturing, I promise you, it isn't this. On the evening of the 21st of August, 1986, in the northwest of Cameroon, people living around a lake called Nyos heard a rumble. Witnesses described it like distant thunder. It lasted about 20 seconds. In a village called Suboom, a man named Joseph Nquine woke around midnight to the noise. He tried to speak and found that he couldn't. He smelled something horrible. He heard his daughter snoring in a way that snoring is not supposed to sound. He got up to go to her, and he collapsed before he reached the bed. He woke the next morning, hours later, to a friend knocking on his door and his trousers stained red. His daughter had not woken up at all. Neither had most of the village. So here's the crime scene. 1,746 people dead. Around 3,500 cattle dead. Chickens dead in the road. Birds dead in the trees. Insects, and this is the detail everyone who was there mentions, insects silent. Not fewer, silent. And the buildings are fine. The crops are fine. The sun came up. It was a beautiful morning. Rescue teams didn't reach the valley for about 36 hours. And when they did, they had no idea what they were walking into. So they went in wearing protective gear and carrying oxygen. The first theory was disease, some catastrophic epidemic that had torn through the region overnight and spared only the immune. That theory survived roughly as long as it took to notice that none of the outsiders were getting sick. The second theory was a weapon. This was 1986, and rumors traveled fast. A chemical attack, a secret test, somebody else's bomb. The government was not enjoying the rumors. And then somebody looked at the lake. Nyos is normally a deep, still, brilliant blue. It was now a reddish brown. Its level had dropped, and there was a scar of stripped vegetation running up the shore, where something had thrown water dozens of meters up bare rock. Whatever had happened here, the lake had done it. The question was how a lake kills a valley. So let's talk about Nyos, because it is not a normal lake. It sits in the crater of an old volcano on the Cameroon Volcanic Line, and it is deep. A little over 200 meters, which for a lake only 2 kilometers long is frankly showing off. Underneath it is a porous pile of old volcanic rubble, and underneath that, somewhere down there, magma. That magma leaks carbon dioxide, constantly, patiently. The gas seeps up through the rubble and dissolves into the water at the bottom of the lake. And here is the thing that makes Nyos special. In most lakes, the seasons save you. Surface water goes cold in winter, gets heavy, sinks, and the whole lake rolls over and burps out whatever it's been holding. Cameroon is tropical. The surface never gets cold enough. So the lake never rolls over. It just sits there in layers, warm on top, cold and dense at the bottom. And that bottom layer sits under 200 meters of water pressure, absorbing gas year after year, century after century. It is a bottle of soda. It has been shaken for centuries. Nobody has ever taken the cap off. And you should know something. This had already happened once. 2 years earlier, on the 15th of August, 1984, 37 bodies were found on a road beside a different Cameroonian lake, about 100 kilometers away, called Monoun. First, they suspected a massacre, then a disease. The bodies were quarantined. An Icelandic volcanologist named Haraldur Sigurdsson was brought in, and he did exactly what you're supposed to do. He looked for evidence of a volcanic eruption, and he found none. No sulfur, no heat, no disturbed lakebed. What he found instead was that the water at the bottom of Monoun was absolutely loaded with carbon dioxide. And from that, Sigurdsson worked out the entire mechanism. He wrote it up. He called it a previously unknown natural hazard. one capable of wiping out whole towns. And a few months before Nyos, he submitted that paper to Science, one of the most prestigious journals on the planet. Science rejected it, too far-fetched. A few months later, the far-fetched thing killed 50 times more people. So what actually happened that night? Something disturbed the lake, probably a landslide off the crater wall. We genuinely don't know, and that isn't a cop-out, it's just the honest answer. But whatever it was, it lifted a slug of that deep water upward, and the instant that water rose, the pressure holding all that gas in solution dropped. So the gas came out of solution, which made the water lighter, which made it rise faster, which dropped the pressure further, which released more gas. You just opened the bottle. Nyos went off like the worst party trick in history. A fountain of water and foam roughly 90 meters into the air, a wave 25 meters tall slamming across the crater, and a cloud of carbon dioxide punching upward at close to 100 kilometers an hour. And then it did the thing that turns this from a nature documentary into a horror film. Carbon dioxide is about 1.5 times heavier than air, so it came back down. It settled into a blanket around 50 meters thick, and it poured downhill, filling the valleys the way water fills a bath, moving somewhere between 20 and 50 kilometers an hour. And it stayed thick enough to kill for about 23 kilometers. Nyos, Kam, Cha, Subum. And this is why nobody ran. Carbon dioxide isn't poison. It doesn't burn you. It doesn't corrode you. It doesn't do anything to you at all. It just stands where the air used to be. No color, essentially no smell. Some survivors reported rotten eggs or gunpowder, but at non-lethal doses, carbon dioxide makes people smell sulfur compounds that were never there. So even the warning sign was a hallucination, and most of them were asleep. About 4,000 people did get out, many carrying lesions, breathing damage, even paralysis for the rest of their lives. The rest never had a decision to make. So what do you do with a lake that is still full? Because it was. The eruption emptied a fraction of it, and the magma carried right on feeding gas back in. One serious proposal was to bomb it. Blow the gas out deliberately, on our schedule, on our terms. William Evans of the United States Geological Survey pointed out the modest flaw in that plan, which is that Nyos is held in place by a natural wall of volcanic debris, and if you blow that wall out, you have simply traded a gas cloud for a flood. The French had a better idea, and it is honestly my favorite piece of engineering on Earth. A physicist named Michel Halbwachs proposed a pipe. That's it, a pipe, running from the deep water to the surface. You prime it once. You pump a little water up, and as that deep water rises, the pressure drops. The gas fizzes out. The mixture becomes lighter than the water around it, and the pipe starts pulling entirely by itself. The lake unscrews its own cap. Forever, for free. The first pipe went in 2001, and it throws a fountain about 50 meters into the sky. Two more followed in 2011. By 2019, researchers concluded the lake had reached a steady state. Gas coming out now balances gas going in, and one single pipe could hold that line indefinitely, with no power and nobody watching. Quick thing, then I'll give you the ending. Most of you watching this aren't subscribed. It's one click, and it genuinely keeps this channel alive. Because here's the last problem. That natural wall, the one they didn't want to bomb, is weathering. If it ever fails, the top 40 meters of Lake Nyos empties out in a flood, which drops the pressure on everything still dissolved underneath, which is precisely the trigger they spent 40 years trying to prevent. So they built a dam to hold up the wall that holds in the lake, that holds the gas. And then everyone turned and looked nervously at Lake Kivu, on the border of Rwanda and the Congo, 2,000 times larger than Nyos, with roughly 2 million people living on its shores, and carbon dioxide and methane dissolved in the deep. A 2005 study warned the risk was climbing. A study released in 2020 found the earlier measurements were flawed, and that Kivu is far closer to a steady state than anyone had feared. Which is good news, delivered with the very specific energy of a scientist saying, probably. So, what kills 1,746 people in a single night and leaves the grass green and the houses standing? Nothing malicious, nothing hunting, nothing that even knew they were there. Just a lake, letting go of a breath it had been holding for centuries, and rolling downhill, because that's what heavy things do. The trees were fine, because trees like carbon dioxide. That's the whole answer. The thing that killed a valley is the thing that feeds a forest. In the wrong amount, in the wrong place, on the wrong night. And it's still down there, breathing out, one pipe at a time.